war between Israel and Hamas is escalating as Israeli troops begin their ground invasion into the Gaza Strip. But this war isn't just between these two sides. It actually involves multiple countries and groups, all with different interests and capabilities, and all with the power to influence this war. In this video, I want to show you each of these groups. I want to show you who they are, what they want, what their calculations are, and to show you how this war between Israel and Hamas is threatening to spread to the rest of the region, but also to the rest of the world.
And U.S. officials are worried that this could escalate beyond just a conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians and could in fact become a regional war.
The Gaza Strip is one of two Palestinian territories. It's home to over 2 million Palestinians. And it's different than the West Bank. The West Bank is cut up and governed by a mix of Israeli occupation and a Palestinian national government. Gaza, on the other hand, is governed by Hamas, an Islamist organization with a militia wing, whose mission is to resist and oppose Israel, to fight against Israeli occupation of Palestinians by whatever means necessary, including terrorism and violence. Hamas chose October 7th, 2023 to launch their most deadly attack, breaking down the border wall surrounding the Gaza Strip and massacring civilians in a ground and rocket assault on Israel. This terrorist attack killed an estimated 1,400 Israelis, and Hamas ended up taking 229 hostages back to the Gaza Strip.
Hamas is expert at using tunnels and basements to hide people, including hostages.
It was a senseless slaughter of innocent lives, and it was the most deadly attack in Israel's history. Immediately after the attack, Israel declares war on Hamas. They call up a reservist force of 360,000 soldiers, and they immediately start bombing the Gaza Strip.
Thousands of airstrikes, and Gaza is now cut off from electricity, water, and food.
Their stated mission is not just to strike back against Hamas, but to end the group forever.
Israel's furious strikes on Gaza are laying waste to entire neighborhoods.
Israel says that the north of the Gaza Strip is now an evacuation zone that they're going to bomb, and they tell the 1 million Palestinians living there to leave, to evacuate towards the south. But Palestinians can't leave this area. Their southern border is with Egypt, and Egypt has vowed that they will not let anyone in. The Prime Minister made this point very clearly by saying that Egypt is willing to sacrifice, quote, millions of lives to avoid allowing Palestinians into Egypt. So the airstrikes continue, and Israel says that they are preparing for a ground invasion to send troops into the Gaza Strip to target Hamas fighters and leaders. This is when Israel's most important ally swoops in.
Joe Biden, the US president, has landed in Israel.
President Joe Biden travels to Israel and urges the Israeli Prime Minister to not make the same mistake that the US made after 9/11, sending in troops to wage a grueling and doomed war against highly motivated fighters, and eventually ending up fighting in dense cities where militants and civilians blend together. The US learned that no matter how powerful your military is, this kind of warfare is brutal and very difficult to achieve any kind of victory. The US is also worried that if Israel invades Gaza, that it will trigger a broader conflict in the Middle East. And this is where we need to zoom out to get a bigger picture look at the rest of this region.
War between Israel and Hamas threatens to explode into the wider region.
If we want to understand the geopolitics of this region, you have to look at Iran. Iran is the country that wants to be the most powerful and influential country in the Middle East. This puts them in direct conflict with Israel, a powerful country that is nuclear armed, that is also a foothold for the United States to project its power in the Middle East, in Iran's neighborhood. So there's this deep enmity between Iran and Israel, and by extension, the United States. Instead of attacking Israel directly, which would be a catastrophe, Iran opposes Israel by funding a network of anti-Israel and anti-Jewish militia groups and governments around the region, giving them money and weapons as part of what they call the axis of resistance against Israel and, by extension, the United States. One of these groups in the axis of resistance is Hamas. Iran supports Hamas by giving them training, money, and, very importantly, weapons, like the thousands of rockets that Hamas fired into Israel on October 7th as a part of their attack. This axis of resistance exists to keep constant pressure on Israel, to make Israel think twice about ever attacking Iran. Iran needs Israel to think that this network is a credible threat, that they will act if Israel does something that they don't like. So as Israel bombards the Gaza Strip, killing all of these civilians, Iran and their axis of resistance feels pressure to respond. So you start to see all these small-scale attacks all throughout the region, targeting Israeli and American targets.
Increasing attacks by Iranian proxies on U.S. forces stationed in the region.
Most of this action breaks out in Israel's northern border with Lebanon, home to Iran's most powerful proxy group called Hezbollah, a political and military organization with tens of thousands of well-trained soldiers. They're armed to the teeth and they're funded by Iran. They have over 100,000 missiles of varying ranges, capable of hitting almost all of Israel. Hezbollah is actually a much greater threat to Israel than Hamas is in Gaza, and in the weeks following the attack, Hezbollah shows that they're ready to fight by shooting at Israeli military installations along this border region. Israel strikes back at Hezbollah in these border skirmishes, threatening an escalation. They drop bombs on 2 airports in Syria, airports where Iran sends weapons and supplies to Hezbollah. It looks like an escalation, especially as Israel moves most of its soldiers up here, not to Gaza, while tens of thousands of Israeli citizens are evacuated.
Attacks by Hezbollah on Israel are continuing, with its fighters destroying an Israeli tank.
The US continues to urge Israel not to invade Gaza, fearing that a ground invasion would cross Hezbollah's red line and provoke them to invade from the north, turning this into a 2-front war, which could boil over into a 3-front war if Palestinians in the West Bank rise up and start fighting with Israeli settlers and soldiers who occupy the West Bank.
The key to a spread of the conflict lies on the Israel-Lebanon border. If that becomes a second front, the entire region will then feel the heat.
One of the paradoxes of global conflict is that even when all of the sides don't actually want a full-scale war, they have nothing to gain from it, a full-scale war can break out anyway. And in this case, what might not be obvious is that Hezbollah and Iran actually don't want a full-scale war with Israel, which would bring a war to Lebanon, a country that has been crumbling under economic turmoil in recent years, for which some Lebanese blame Hezbollah. A war would deepen this crisis and deepen the resentment for Hezbollah and threaten their ability to operate in Lebanon. And yet, as Israeli jets continue to bombard the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah and their Iranian sponsors have to show that they are willing to act, that they are a credible threat, that they have red lines that are being crossed. This is the deadly game of chicken that escalates conflicts like this. This is what turns them into a situation that no one can control. But another paradox of global conflict is that some threats of force can actually diffuse the tension, can stabilize an escalating conflict. At least that's the bet that the United States made here.
The Pentagon's deploying 300 more troops to the Mideast.
While Israel was still debating whether or not to send troops into Gaza, the US deploys 2 naval strike groups, one off the coast of Israel and the other off the coast of Iran. These groups are made up of huge aircraft carriers, accompanied by supply and warships. We're talking 15,000 sailors in total, standing watch as this conflict escalates. The US also readies its missile defense systems and prepares soldiers for deployment. It's a huge show of force, and it's the US trying to use its superior military power to send a signal to Iran and its proxies that they are there and they are watching, and that they will be dragged in to any escalating conflict.
To any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't.
And then, against the warning of the United States, Israel sends troops into Gaza.
Israeli troops and tanks advanced further into Gaza, engaged in urban combat.
The ground invasion is more limited than expected, but it's what the Israeli Prime Minister is calling the second stage in their plan to completely destroy Hamas and its leadership. As Israeli troops flooded into Gaza, the big question was, would Hezbollah act? Would they invade from the north? And surprisingly, they didn't. And this shows us three things that weren't as clear before. Number one, it shows that the price of a war for Lebanon is huge, and that Hezbollah is taking that into account. They stand accountable to the Lebanese people, and Lebanon does not want war. It also shows us that Iran is hesitant to use Hezbollah in this context. Hezbollah is their most powerful card to play in deterring Israel from ever attacking them. And in using it to protect Palestinians, they will weaken Hezbollah's role as a deterrent. Or, to say it bluntly, what this shows us is Iran cares much more about its own security than it does about the plight of the Palestinians. But the third thing that this shows is that Hezbollah believes that Israel will not be successful in their mission to eradicate Hamas. According to a Lebanese diplomat who talked to the New York Times, Hezbollah has been, quote, quietly telling its partners that it believes that Hamas is in a good position and does not yet need Hezbollah's help. And indeed, Hamas itself has come out and said that they are ready, that they've been preparing for a ground invasion because they have an advantage. Inevitably, this ground invasion will mean luring Israeli soldiers into a labyrinth of densely populated cities where fighters can easily hide and blend in with civilians. Not to mention Hamas's huge network of hundreds of kilometers of underground tunnels where they can hide, store supplies, and store their hostages.
The tunnels also have a psychological use, an unseen, unpredictable angle designed to keep enemies wondering when and where they'll be ambushed.
For any Israeli ground offensive, this may prove the biggest challenge.
It's a truly excruciating kind of warfare in every conceivable sense.
This is a quickly changing situation, and I don't know what the conflict looks like when you are watching this. But right now, the bombardment of Gaza continues. The death toll of Palestinians is skyrocketing. The people are running out of food and water and medical supplies. The UN is condemning Israel's response, saying that there's no justification for what Hamas did, but Israel's response is too much. Too many civilians are being killed. Some at the UN are even calling Israel's actions potential war crimes. And the world is calling for a pause in the fighting, a ceasefire that would allow humanitarian aid to get into the Strip. But a ceasefire is something that Israel's prime minister says is not on the table.
After the horrific attacks of October 7th, calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas, to surrender to terrorism, to surrender to barbarism. That will not happen.
Egypt has just started letting foreign nationals and severely wounded people in the Gaza Strip leave and cross into their country, but they continue to deny entry to the vast majority of Palestinians who remain trapped inside of this small rectangle. But they are, together with Qatar, helping mediate between the sides, already facilitating a deal that released 4 hostages that Hamas had captured on October 7th. For now, Iran's axis of resistance stands deterred from escalating this any further, continuing small attacks, but calculating that a wider spread conflict isn't worth it, especially as the US moves its troops into position. It is a delicate balance, one that could easily break or spiral. All it takes is one miscalculation, one attack that was meant to be a message but actually kills dozens of people and elicits a stronger response, which in turn elicits a stronger retaliation, which could lead to an escalation, a spiral into a catastrophic war in the Middle East. And in the middle of this all, people and families who wanted nothing to do with any of this, who don't care about the geopolitical calculations and the balance of power in the Middle East. Millions of people confined to a war zone, not sure if the last thing they will ever see is the next airstrike from Israeli jets. Innocent civilian hostages kept in underground tunnels, not sure if they'll ever see their families again. And the families who are mourning the loss of their loved ones, who were taken by this senseless conflict. And at the root of it all, the leaders in charge of protecting their people, but who have instead chosen to pursue policies of division, occupation, violence, and hatred. The ingredients that produced this current situation. So for now, we will watch as the Middle East sinks towards deeper and deeper conflict. And we will hope that level heads will prevail in the decision-making, and that somehow we can prevent more suffering and more loss of life. This is gearing up to be months, if not years, of conflict in this region, and I will be following it and trying to make sense of it for everyone. If you want a broader context of what the Gaza Strip is and what the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is all about, which I did not cover in this piece, there is a great series called Modern Conflicts by Real Life Lore, where he goes into the roots and the context of this conflict. It's very, very important to understand if you want to try to make sense of what's going on here. The Modern Conflict series is available exclusively on Nebula, which is a streaming platform that is run by all of us creators. I put all of my videos up there early and ad-free, and there's a bunch of exclusive content, including the Modern Conflicts series by Real Life Lore. But there's tons of other coverage of Israel and Palestine, and it's a great way to learn not just about this conflict, but many other conflicts and topics and histories. I mean, on Nebula, there is a huge diversity of really fantastic educational videos. A lot of it exclusive to Nebula, so you can't watch it anywhere else. Last year, like 10,000 of you signed up for this after I talked about it, using this like bundle deal that gave you a big discount. That deal is expiring now because it's been a year. I just got the email saying that the bundle is breaking. You're not going to be able to have access to Nebula anymore. If you want to retain your access to Nebula to watch my videos early and ad-free and all this other stuff, there is a link in my description. It is nebula.tv/Johnny Harris. If you go there, you can sign up and get a big discount on Nebula by subscribing directly to Nebula. It's $2.50 a month if you do the annual thing, $5 a month if you do the monthly thing. A part of that subscription goes directly back to us to help fund our journalism, to help us make more videos like this. So if you're interested in watching a bunch of stuff ad-free on Nebula and supporting this channel, make sure to use the link. Don't just go to nebula.tv. You won't get the discount and you won't support us. Use the link, please. Ultimately, I love what we're building over at Nebula. We have a news product that is launching early next year that's going to help bring important news to everybody. And I'm just a believer in good, independent journalism and creators banding together to build something like this. So I will see some of you over on Nebula, and for the rest of you, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and we will see you soon in a future video. Thanks, guys. Hey, for those still watching, don't forget to check out our new channel, Search Party, which is run by my old Vox colleague, Sam Ellis. Sam's working on a big video right now that's another angle of the geopolitics of the Middle East, which we'll be publishing in a few weeks. So make sure to go over and subscribe to not miss it.